All right, welcome to another episode of the Ask Swenk Show. This is episode 49. And on today's episode, we are going to chat about white labeling. So if people are white labeling your services or you're white labeling someone else's, make sure you watch this episode.
I'm Jason Swenk, and I'm answering your questions. And this is Ask Swenk.
Now, before we jump in, I want to tell you about this really cool software for proposals. It's called Quala, and it really creates this interactive experience where you can actually check out where they reviewed the proposal, they can accept the proposal, they can pay it, you can make it very interactive, and it's all web-based. And it's a really pretty cool tool that I checked out, I use, and if you want to learn more about it, make sure you go to jasonswank.com/proposal software. And you can get a free trial for 30 days. And then if you put in Smart Agency, when you're actually signing up for the free trial, you can get half off for the first 3 months. So make sure you do it. It's pretty cool software. There's nothing to lose, so make sure you do it now while you still can. Now the first question, let's go ahead and jump into it. Phil asked, I currently white label my services for another company, and they are dealing with some pretty big clients. What are your thoughts on white labeling? So I'll tell you a couple scenarios. I don't like white labeling. I didn't like people white labeling my services. And the reason being is and we work with some of the biggest agencies in the world would white label our services when we were small, okay? Because we were good at some of these services and we were cheap, I guess, right? So they could mark it up. But the problem is they want you to follow their process, and their process is actually broken. And if their process wasn't broken, they would probably be doing it themselves. Like, they're coming to you and they're going to want you to use their process, which is broken. Doesn't make much sense, right? And so a lot of times too, as you're following their broken process, that's going to take you out of your game, create a lot more work than it would. So case in point, let's say we were doing a website white label project. We would want to meet with the client, have them go through what we called our mission plan document, be able to ask that client questions in order to interpret what they wanted. Well, the bigger agency would just say, well, send us the document, we'll go through it. Well, they're not going to answer it the way you need in order to design what you want. Same thing goes with when you start creating the concepts and you want to present those concepts to that particular client. The bigger agency is going to say, just send us the concepts, we'll present it, and then we'll give you feedback. They're going to give you broken feedback, right? There's going to be a lot of loss in translation or a lot of things that you would probably want to ask them in the meeting based on what they're saying. Like they'll just say, oh no, the client just hates all the concepts. Rather than really drill it down into one particular thing, maybe it was a color, maybe it was a picture that you used in the concept that threw them off for the whole thing, right? And so they're not going to be following your process. So I didn't like white labeling. I liked partnering with agencies, but I would always say, look, you got to tell them who we are, and we have to have direct contact with that particular account. We'll sign NDAs or anything like that, so we're not going to steal them from you, but they're going to know Solar Velocity exists, right? And that always helped us out. And the other thing too is when you're white labeling your services, you're not going to be able to tell people you worked on that project. You're not going to be able to show that as examples of your work. Most of the bigger agencies are going to say, no, you cannot say you worked for Hitachi or AT&T. And if you do, then they could come after you for legal stuff that you don't want because they have a lot deeper pockets than you actually do. So I would tell you not to white label, even though it might be a significant amount of your revenue. I would try to change the relationship where they're telling people, yes, our strategic partner that we use is Solar Velocity. We are going to be billing you directly for this, but Solar Velocity is going to be doing the actual work and we're going to be managing them. That's fine. Then you could go to the client, you can be in the meetings, you can use it on the portfolio, and then possibly you could talk to the agency about like, look, we need to make sure we follow our process, and you need to make sure that they will. And if they don't, have an out, because they're just going to eat you up in the scope creep. I bet if you looked at the projects you're doing for the bigger agencies, you're not as profitable as going direct. All right. So Phil asked one more. I know the agency I'm white labeling for is adding a large chunk of money on top of what we're charging. For example, I charge $5,000 for a website. Dude, charge more. And they are charging the client like $25,000. I would otherwise be happy with that price I charged them if I didn't know what they were charging on top of it. Should I up my rates to them and ask them to go elsewhere, or carry on with them taking on the lion's share of the profit? You know, Phil, dude, this should be a wake-up call and say, look, the same amount of work you're doing for $5,000, someone's charging $25,000. So you got to look at why is that? And the thing is it all comes down to really kind of probably lead generation, right? You're probably relying solely on referrals, and you need to get out of that and create this lead machine or some sales system in order to get that coming back to you. We've created lots of videos and content for that, so I'm not going to talk about that here, but you need to do that in order to create that pipeline, because now the cool thing is now you know mentally in your head that's holding you back that your work is worth at least $25,000 because they're marking it up, right? And they're not doing much. So you need to charge more. Going to them, you know, yeah, I think you should raise your rates. I don't think they'll go, I think you should raise your rates on new ones coming in. Just say, hey, you know, costs are going up, we're adding. If they go somewhere else, no problem. But it's really, I would love to see you going direct more. But if you're really bad at sales and lead gen, right? And you're happy with where you're at, stay the same. I mean, if everything's working really well, you know, keep it the same. But if you're not happy, if you're uncomfortable, if you want to take it up a notch, then you need to be doing something different. And so hopefully you will. All right. So next question is from Meg. Meg asked, in instances of white labeled services, which party is responsible for liability insurance for the services rendered? The company that is white labeling a service or the actual service provider? So it really depends. I mean, you know, a lot of the bigger clients will actually have, you know, make you have liability insurance. And why they do that is let's say they pay you $100,000 for this project and then you go under, right? You know, they want to make sure that you have insurance that, you know, they get their money back. That's why it exists. So a lot of times it's actually whoever signed the actual contract. Now, if you're the agency getting white labeled, that agency may ask you to have liability insurance. Most of the time, I've never seen them do that. Most of the time it's from the client to the person that, you know, the agency that owns that particular contract. So it's usually on the top. But it's always good to have liability insurance. I mean, it protects you if anything really bad happens. But you need to check with lawyers and insurance and all those kinds of people. But, you know, most of the time, just to answer your question, it is the top agency that needs to have it, unless the agency white labeling your services requires you to have it, where you can just call your insurance company and you know, whoever does your home or your business insurance or whatever, and just add that value. You know, most of the time our liability insurance, I think, was $2 to $5 million back in the day. So sometimes it was higher. So, but you know, it doesn't cost much. All right, cool. So we are all done. If you guys have questions, make sure you ask them. Make sure you join in the conversation, comment, and share this, and I will chat with you soon. I want you to join the conversation. Make sure you comment and subscribe. Thanks for giving me your most valuable asset.